You just mentioned, MLS teams can come in and poach these academies whenever they want without compensating them. And so, the Cosmos are taking a real risk, and any academy that's run on that kind of system right now, wouldn't you say they're just taking a really big risk?
I think there's a conflict, and it has to be addressed some way. I think that I wrote up a story about the Rapids and how the Rapids were attempting to address that by providing services to the clubs around them. And I was contacted by Lauren Donaldson, who is the coach of Real Colorado. And he said that, he had declined the Rapids offer. I published this on a Soccerlens story. It's called, Is It Time for Youth Transfer Fees in the U.S.? And he declined it because he said he thought he had a top-notch system. He felt he didn't need the support of an MLS club. He had been developing national team players. He had been able to provide scholarships. And he didn't want them poaching their players, and he didn't want their involvement. And so what he said is that, now I don't know how much of this is true or not, but that because they are nonprofit,
right?
They can be provided with scholarships. So what the MLS clubs could do is give them a scholarship in return for their player. Also, when the players get transferred over, he advocated something like the UEFA schedule fee, so that he used the example of Altador. So if a player gets sold on, like he sells, let's say the Rapids pick up one of his players, and that player gets sold overseas, that the Rapids would get, a piece of that profit, but then a percentage of that would also go to the developing club.
Yeah.
And it would just be a two-step process, and it would stop there. It wouldn't go beyond that. But that makes sense, and it makes sense to me, because that's the goal of MLS, is to develop better youth products, and that starts at an extremely young age. And there has to be a real incentive for the clubs, professional clubs, to develop players to play well and not just to win games. Winning ugly, it's a cute phrase, but it doesn't go anywhere.
Right. And there is that difference. And there's a book by Michael Maddox that's out that discusses kind of, what if things were different, if our development system were different. And the big difference between a pay-to-play academy or a program, where if you have rich parents, you can probably get in, and there are probably a few kids who get scholarships. And then you've got these other academies, and I brought up New York, and it could be any other academy outside of the Cosmos, but they're a absolutely across-the-board free academy. Now, they can afford to do that now, but as Brett pointed out, how long can that happen? And
how long have they been in existence? I mean, do they even know what they're up against yet? I mean, like got to talk about a guy like Ed Kelly. Ed Kelly plays for the U.S. national team. He came over from Ireland. He's been the coach of BC. He coached the Boston Bulls. In between that, he has the Boston. What the hell have they called now? The New England Eagles. They've gone through some changes. Anyway, but I know he actually lives in my town. So all this stuff goes on around, and so so he has a very competitive play. And I've got a great quote from him. Let me pull it up. And so he's doing all this stuff. And his team is very competitive, and very good players get cut from it. But all these great coaches, like, say, MPS, Mass Premier Soccer, these guys, all these coaches, they love soccer. They're not just out to win games. They all know how it needs to be played. They don't like caving just to the wealthy parents.
Right. Well, I'm going to throw out an idea at you, Lisa, and just see what you think. It could be a completely stupid idea. But why couldn't these free academies like the Cosmos sign a contract?
I really have to stop you with the Cosmos. Exactly how long have they been around?
Well, okay, we'll just go with free academies then, because they're not going to be.
There's no free academies. This stuff is really expensive. You have to pay people to coach these people, and it's not just coaching. The administrative work, the dealing with the fields and the parents and the planning out and dealing with kids. You're dealing with kids.
Yep, I agree.
They're not players; they're kids. They can be very annoying.
Well,
I can vouch for that.
I agree with you, Lisa.
And they can have serious issues that really break your heart at the same time,
Right.
Yep.
But what I'm doing is throwing out an ideal here, and that's why I called it maybe a stupid idea. But let's conceptualize for a second the idea of a free academy. I don't care who it is. But if you were able to set up with the
I want a pony. Can I have a pony?
No, that's not a part of this academy, Lisa. But if you were to sign a contract with a youth player that says that after that player leaves your academy and becomes a big professional in the MLS or Europe, he has to pay back that academy for each year he makes. Let's just throw out an arbitrary number, $100,000. Okay, he pays the academy back 2% of his salary. Why is a contract like that with a youth academy player in this imaginary ideal system an unreal option for American soccer right now? Am I way off base?
I think with 2% of a salary and what we define salary and what happens with injuries, I think it has to be the cost of the sale. I talked to Lee Robinson, and I just connected with him recently as well. I don't know if he's still with West Ham. He was running the West Ham youth program. And before then, he was with Cardiff. And when he was with Cardiff, he sold on Chris Gunter to Tottenham for $3 million when he was 17, and Aaron Ramsey when he was 17 to Arsenal for $5 million. And he's one of these guys it's all about the little kids. It's all about the little kids, and they start very young. But he talked about that. We talked about the MLS clubs, and over there this is an interesting number here. The clubs over there invest between £500,000 to $10 million, depending on the club, annually. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Where's the word free come into that? All right.
Not much.
All right. But let's see. Wait a minute. This is what he said about MLS right here. I'm looking at my computer when I'm doing this.
Fair enough.
He thinks the academies definitely reach down to a lower bracket, so they're not stealing, right? So, and in a way, there's another quid pro quo with that as certain players drop off from the MLS academies, they could also move on to the other local clubs. And these people are very qualified, and they've been going against the tide for years, developing players, So they're not like when you say, for profit, they're just like skunks, They're not,
Right.
But he said that looking at what MLS is, this is a quote, looking at what MLS is trying to do, I feel they got it wrong, as players 16 to 18 will already be with clubs and will create resentment if they leave to go with any MLS academies. You need to get the clubs around you, but into MLS programs so not to create problems. Start with the younger age groups, as I did with a 5 to 10 year plan. We recruit 6 to 18 and it's ongoing. Sometimes the lower level clubs are compensated depending on the success of a player through the pro game. UEFA now will insist on compensation to junior clubs if a boy joins at 16. And they get into litigious problems with that when one club takes a player from another. And it does go into litigation on a regular basis, and they have to get arbitration in between clubs. And so that's why the schedule is set up. So this is something, let's see, what does he say about that? Like at U14, the point offered a scholarship which runs 6 to 18. If the player's been tapped up by a bigger club and you've offered him a contract, then you will go to a tribunal if two clubs cannot agree on a fee.
Right.
And it can be very difficult indeed. So this is something that the MLS clubs need to get on board with pretty quick so they'll get supported by the clubs around them.
Yeah, because it sounds like to me in many ways, and I may be wrong, but until there's an MLS team in every state that, where we play soccer, I mean, there are plenty of great soccer players in Indiana, but we have no pro club here. So even Chicago has to come down here and, as we've put it before, poach.
Now, I'd like to, one of the guys that I'd like to get on to talk to is John Dorn with Chicago Fire, because I know that Chicago Fire hold open tryouts And I'd be curious to find out how much they actually scout the other Chicago teams like Chicago Magic and the Shockers and stuff like that. I would like to see if they are. I mean, obviously, I don't know if they'll state that they are poaching to an extent, but I know my question really is if they hold an open tryout and a player from, let's just say, the Chicago Magic comes over, tries out, and gets onto the academy roster, the U16 team, let's just say, can the Magic? Would you say that the Magic has ground to be upset with that?
Well, it depends. I mean, if he was a scholarship player, I imagine they would be upset with that because they probably don't have a great many scholarship players. And once again, then you get the economic thing. That's the bigger thing. We're getting kind of nitty-gritty here.
Yeah.
But the economic picture is that, we're about as close to a depression as this country has been.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of people would say we're actually there.
Yep.
And there's so many unemployed people and so much poverty and people are side by side still, and I think there's a certain resentment.
Yeah.
And I think with the scholarship that people are paying for other people, that's difficult because just because people are paying for their own kid doesn't mean that they're not that it's not extremely difficult for them to do that.
Yeah. For the last 2 minutes, I want to give you kind of a general question that maybe you can handle and give us some insight into, although it won't be easy. You mentioned a new American approach to the game is taking place in one of your articles, that maybe we are moving forward. Do you think we're headed in the right direction? And as far as working with the NCAA in heading towards that right direction, where are we and where are we headed, in your view?
I've talked to an awful lot of people, and I'm really impressed with their devotion and contributions and passion for the game. And I think one of the most difficult things, and the thing I hear all the time, is there's so many different facets in U.S. soccer, with MLS and with college and with the youth clubs and with women's soccer and with the national teams and with the fans of overseas teams and with the Hispanics that have a real hard time fitting into these systems. That people really need to work together, and that they're actually working against each other.
Yeah.
And the higher up you go in these levels, the better coaches, the more experienced, they're all saying the same thing. Yeah. The organizations have to work together because there are so many committed people, and so there are so many good things going on. I think it's very positive. I think some things have to take place, but I'm very optimistic about development in this country.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, Lisa, we could have done this for at least an hour and a half. So I want to re-invite you back onto the show later on in 2011, and maybe we can kind of look over what's changed, if anything has, and kind of revisit this topic, if you'd be willing.
Sure. We didn't talk about college at all.
I know.
I read up about that. I went back into my files and found all the stuff I need to publish, and it's like.
Oh, I know. And now you can publish it because you haven't had to talk about it quite yet. But we need to bring you back on. Just let us know when you're thinking about putting all this stuff out. We should definitely have you back to talk just specifically about that item, which will probably take 20 minutes on its own as it happens.
I probably talked too much.
But we had a great time. But as Brett and I have learned, these shows go by way too fast for us to cover everything we want. But I want to make sure that everybody visits Lisa's articles again at the Boston Examiner as well as Soccerlens.
Most of them are on U.S. Soccer Examiner. It's a different site.
Okay.
Actually.
Do you have the website?
And a lot of these are on Soccerlens too.
All right. This has been the Straight Red Card. Checking out. Take care, folks.